Hello, I'm Darcy Bits, and today I've got a special treat. For me, it is the end of the year, and something I like to do often for lots of things is to sort of run through how the year's been. And for me, my biggest thing I've done this year has been custom magic cards. I made a lot of custom magic cards. I'm not going to go through every custom magic card. Instead, I'm going through, I think, only 35, which sounds like an absurd number, but that is just a small portion. I made a lot of cards this year. So, previously, I threw a bunch of cards into a folder, copied them over, so I'd just be like, yeah. These are the ones I want to look at. This is not a top 10 list. This is not, it's just kind of cards I want to talk about, because I thought they were cool, and I think I made some cool designs. And this video, I'm not editing this one. I worked too hard all year. I've decided, nope, I'm not doing it. This is not the final video. There's going to be one more video this year so that I have a video every week for 2024. But basically, this is going to be the last, kind of real video. The last one's going to be, news. Don't worry about it. Point being is, I'm going to look at some cards, and I'm not going to edit this because I don't want to. I don't want to do that. It's Christmas and New Year's, and I'm busy. So join me if you want, I guess. I don't know. This isn't for anyone but me. I don't expect anyone to watch this except for me. Hi, me watching this in the future because I'm a narcissist. Let's talk about what we've done this year. First, there was the West of Loathing, Outlaws of Thunder Junction, crossover, fake secret lair. That one was really fun because I framed it like it was real. Like, all my stuff I do, it's custom. I'm not trying to trick anybody. But it was April Fool's. So I was like, okay, I can have a little fun with this. And I did admit at the end that, this is fake, just in case anyone doesn't know. But, I loved these cards. There's a whole bunch of them. And I made all the art. And this is the only time, despite being, some of the first custom cards I made in the year, this is the only time I made a custom border. Now, to be fair, most of this is taken from game assets. So West of Loathing video game, it's good, play it. But most of this is game assets. We got these clouds and we got this rope. I did edit it into a frame shape, but this is just an actual asset from the game. The art is actually mine though, but because of the aesthetic of the game, that's stick figures, cars, I could just do that. And they're some of my favorite ones because they look correct, if that makes sense. My art does not look like Magic card art, but it does kind of look like I could make a secret layer, weird, fancy art that you wouldn't normally see on real cards because it doesn't need to be Magic style art. So I think that was a lot of fun. So this one's the Wary Beanslinger. It's a 3-mana blue and red 2/2. They're a human wizard. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you create a food token. So I wanted them to do this food thing because Beanslingers are part of West of Loathing, a part of the setting, but blue and red don't really use food. So I also had this effect of, if an ability of an artifact you control would cause you to gain life, add that much mana of any one color instead. So even though you've made food in colors that don't normally, you can't use it as food. Now, if this guy dies, you then do have the food, so maybe there's something interesting you could do there, but for the most part, you're turning your food into treasure, right? It's turning food into treasure with extra steps, because you're spending 2 mana to get 3 life, which is 3 mana, right? But I thought it was fun, I enjoyed this one, and it turns off the food's life gain ability, which I thought was out of color. There are also a number of other artifacts you can use to generate mana, but if you look at the options, there's nothing that's really broken. It's just there might be an infinite combo somewhere that I didn't find, but there's plenty of infinite combos in Magic. That's not really a shot against a card. Now, this was one of them. I did also do the Abandoned Pickle Factory, which is a land. It says food tokens you control are 1/1 spirit creatures with Defender. Again, food is kind of a big deal in the setting. I really like the idea of doing a Universes Beyond West of Loathing. That one actually feels has so much potential. And then otherwise, it taps for colorless, and you can spend 1 and tap it to create a food, which, cool. I think that's fun. Cool. Great. Yeah. There's a Resourceful Snake Oiler. A lot of the ones from this set I've been talking about, because I really enjoyed it. I love the art here. I should say, the art on this one, this is basically just the actual screenshot from the game that I traced. Like, it's my art, but, like, it's just the actual thing. There's nothing fancy going on. All these other ones are actually, I enjoy them quite a bit, because they're obviously the style of the game, but they're not actually shots from the game, right? They're, like, my own, like, choreography, for lack of a better term. Resourceful Snake Oiler, green and blue, 2/2. Human Rogue. At the beginning of your upkeep, create a 1/1 green and blue snake. It probably should have just been a green snake, to be honest. Just like, you don't really need it to be blue. Whenever a snake you control dies, put your choice of a +1/+1 counter, a death touch counter, or a first strike counter on target creature. Because they're going to use the snake to do all sorts of things. They're like the potion master guy in that set. Electrified Snake is our blue-black. I wanted to have all the color pairs like represented for the most part. I think there's like one that doesn't get represented in that set. This one is a 3-mana, 2/1. It's a snake, and it is blue, black, and when it dies, you may exile an instant or sorcery card from a graveyard. If you do, you copy that card and add black. Until end of turn, you may cast the copy as though it had flash. So it's kind of like this, like, not Splinter, right? What am I talking about? Spark Double, whatever that card's called. Where you can get a card out of your graveyard, except it has to be when it dies, and you get an extra black to help you pay for it. So it's kind of, I don't know, I think it's interesting. It's not flashback, it's just like you exile it and then you can cast it until end of turn, but it's like the same kind of idea. That's it. It would go back into the graveyard. I didn't add any, like, then exile it again when it resolves or anything, so some weird things you could do with that. I think it's fun. I didn't actually do any legends in this set. I feel like legends are this sort of really obvious place to go with custom Magic, and I do that myself all the time. I think it's super fun. But for this set, I really liked the world of West of Loathing, and I wanted to represent it. This is Unsettling Clown Vendor. I are black and red 1/2. I was very excited when in Duskmourn they made Clown a real type. So Devil Clown, actually very possible thing to come to Magic. When Unsettling Clown Vendor enters the battlefield, create a food token. Artifact tokens you control have, tap, sacrifice this permanent, target opponent loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life. So that could have been a thing that, like, they had, like, tap and untapped artifact token you control. Opponent loses life, you gain life. I don't know, I gave it to the thing itself. There's no real reason why it needs to be. Except for the fact that I guess if you made, like, servos, like artifact creature tokens, they would have something sickness. Like, that's the only time it really matters, but So black can make food plenty. That's not unreasonable. I mean, Asmarina Martica decent to cool the car. Like, she's black-red and she makes food. Like, So, yeah, I think it checks out. And so they still have their food ability, but instead you can also use them for this drain effect instead, which I think is very, very cool. Still sacrifices. It's just like an alternate use of food, which I think is a more interesting type of food. I would be kind of into this being an artifact type, honestly. I think that would be a fun twist on food, is this sort of just dies and drains. And maybe it's kind of boring, because, like, why are you saving it? Like, what are you saving it for, right? So I could see that being kind of... Now that I think about that, that's kind of useless. Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. But, different kinds of predefined artifact tokens are fascinating to me. I do hope we see Junk come back to real Magic. It was only in the Fallout set, and it was a pretty cool mechanic, actually. Like, it kind of feels like it should have done what Blood did, right? Like, causes you to rummage because it's digging through the trash. But I guess instead the idea is that you find something useful, but maybe it'll break before you can use it. Just as a reminder, Junk is exile top card of your deck. It impulse draws. You can play it until end of turn from exile. So I think that's what it's supposed to be the intent, but whatever. I've completely gone off the rails. It's a Clown Devil. They're going to give you food, but also it might hurt you. Now we've got into the actual Outlaws of Thunder Junction. That was like this fun little thing I did, and then one of the things I did before Outlaws came out proper was I took a look at one of the arts that we were shown. We were shown the art for Hard Bristle Bandit, and I think we were given the name. I'm pretty sure this is the actual name of the actual card, but we didn't know what the card did, and I decided to make one up. Very different from the actual end result, but I do really like this design. Change the art, change the name. Otherwise, I'm actually very into this. 2 mana, 0/3 plant rogue. It's red, it's green. Whenever you discard a land card, put a +1/+1 counter on Harvest Mana. I think we knew there was going to be land discard mattering in the commander decks when I made this. I think that's right. And then they have the activated ability, discard 1 or more land cards. Harvest Mana fights target creature you don't control. So you can actually discard extra to get extra +1/+1 counters, right? I think that's fun. So that's it. I think it's a really tight design. 0/3 is a nice blocker, and then it can get counters when you discard lands, and it can fight. I think it's super cool. I like that one a lot. Slumbra. Ooh, we're looking at Bloomburrow. Now, this one was way before Bloomburrow actually came out. We had been shown Lumra, that's why the name's so similar, the first Calamity Beast. And I theorized at the time that Calamity Beasts were going to all be, there was going to be 5, and they were all going to be legendary. They were all going to be legendary monocolor beasts. And it turns out Lumra didn't even matter. Like, they didn't even show up in the story. Like, they're just like, I'm a bear. And, okay, sure. And there's a whole bunch of non-legendary Calamity Beasts. I don't know. I like that set a lot. I think that the whole Calamity Beast thing kind of was a fumble, I think. Only one mattered. It was the cool bird, whose name I can't remember. And they aren't all monocolored either. There's that big panther cougar guy, Igra, which is green white? I don't remember. Anyway, Slumber Glacial Fate was my take on a mono white legendary Calamity Beast. It is a 5 mana 5/15 elemental sloth. It has Defender, and each creature you control with Defender can block an additional creature each combat. I love walls and defenders. I think they're very, very cool, but I hate that the only real archetype when it comes to defenders are not just kidding, actually I'm going to attack you with them. I just think that's like kind of missing the flavor of defenders is walls. Like, I don't want my walls to punch you. I want to be able to win by blocking, right? And so their next ability, so first of all, it makes all your defenders better at blocking. I think that's cool. And whenever a creature you control blocks, it deals damage to target player equal to the total power of all creatures it's blocking. So attack me, and I will block your damage back at your face. I think that's super fun. I really like this. It's just like, I'm just here. I'm just slow and I'm hanging out. Don't mess with me. I don't mess with you. It's fine. And then, of course, you play like some kind of threaten effects and you force everyone to attack you and then you kill them. It'll be great. Not threaten. That's the wrong term. Threaten is gain control of until end of turn. You know what I mean, though. Total war type things. Yeah. All right. I think that's super fun. Yeah. This is just me talking about the cards I designed that I liked. Okay, the duo cycle. Yes. So I made a video about, in Bloomburrow, there's a series of duos. They're these cards that have 2 different creature types that were supposed to span those things because you'd have the, every type was 2 colors. And then, so they would have an overlap. And you would have the duos have that overlap. But not every combination of the 10 different creature types of Bloomburrow had crossovers, right? Only, I think, 5 did. It was a cycle. Which is cool. Like, they don't need to do one for every type. That would be a lot. But I was like, well, this is a cool. Let's make more. Let's make more. And you can see I didn't bother doing a lot of art for this one because my turnaround is way faster than it should be. Like I said at the top of the video, I work too much. I am busy, and if I need to do more than 1 card in a video, it's going to mean that each card has less attention to it. So I just slapped some art on there. I do think it's very cute. Don't get me wrong. Anyway, this is a 3 mana 0/1 Rybat Raccoon. Whenever you cast a spell with mana value 4 or greater, which is not the actual mechanic that raccoons care about. Raccoons care about whenever you spend your 4th mana on spells, but I figured that'd be a way of satisfying that, so it's akin to it without explicitly being expend 4. Whenever you cast a spell with mana value 4 or greater, for the first time each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. I just think this is really cute. It's maybe too much. Like, you play 3 for a 0/1. If it doesn't get removed, which it probably will, you can then start going wide with your counters. Of course, you wanted to be casting these big spells, so maybe that doesn't even work. Maybe Maybe that's like, I really want to be going, like, I'm making 1,000,000 but then I need to cast the big spell. I think it has a lot of potential. I think there's a lot of cool space for this. I don't think it's too strong, but I do think it's very powerful in the right deck, and that's the stuff I like. That's my favorite. Yoshimaru! Yes! Okay, so Yoshimaru was a card I designed for Duskmourn. These are not necessarily in any order. They're just like grouped together. It should be clear about that. I'm pretty sure there's some cards I designed prior to this that are coming up later. Don't worry about it. Yoshimaru, yes. So in the story of Duskmourn, Yoshimaru is present. They're there, at least in Chapter 1, where they haven't gone to Duskmourn yet. Instead, Yoshimaru is hanging out, being a cute dog, and then the Wanderer's like, I gotta go check out this weird evil plane. I'm not taking my dog with me there. Amanatu, can you take care of my dog, please? And of course, at that time, we knew that Amanatu was going to get a commander deck, which is weird. I was like, well, if Amanatu's not on Duskmourn, why would they get a commander deck? They're not present in the fight. They're not part of the conflict, right? So maybe they show up at the end with Yoshimaru. So Yoshimaru was designed, you can see I didn't use the Duskmourn symbol, I used the Duskmourn commander symbol. This was a theory of a cool card that could be in the Amanatu commander deck. So my concept was that Amanatu and Yoshimaru would show up at the end of the story. I don't think this happened. I don't remember the story perfectly, but I'm pretty sure that doesn't happen. And save everybody. So this is Yoshimaru, Miraculous Saber. And we knew at the time that Amanatu's deck cared about Miracle. So 1 mana, 1/1 flash. When Yoshimaru enters, if its Miracle cost was paid, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Spend white to put Yoshimaru on top of its owner's library, because that means that next thing you draw will be it. And then it has Miracle 0. So, just cast. This is a 1 mana flash creature that has no other effect except that you can then pay to put it on top of your deck. So if it gets stuck in your hand, you can spend white, flash it in, spend another white, put it on top of your deck, and then it will be there for the start of your next turn. So 2 mana to do to put a +1/+1 counter on everything is kind of how it is the first time, and then from then on it's 1 mana. But Miracle is the first draw of your turn. Now it is any turn. Usually that only matters on yours, but since they have flash, you can do them on anyone's turn. So if you were playing like a blue-white deck, I think Amanatu was blue-white-black, I think that's right. But if you're a blue-white deck, you could very much play with this, I'm going to put them on top of my deck, and then on your turn I'm going to draw a card. And it's the first card I drew in my turn, so I'll then Miracle them out. And then I'll do that again, and then I'll do that again. So I think they had this, like, potentially way too strong, but very fun little weird thing. Also, if they get counters, you kind of don't necessarily want to be letting them leave the battlefield because then they lose their counters. So I think there's like a cool space to play with there. And I thought it was a fun use of Miracle in a way that Miracle kind of just feels like, that's nice that happened, but not something you really like can plan around, right? And this, like, you can actually set up your Miracle, and I think that's really cool. What do we have? Morrigan! Okay, so Morrigan is a card I designed for my girlfriend's birthday. This was in September. You don't need to know that. What am I doxing my girlfriend for? I'm not actually doxing. That's not what doxing means. I know that. Don't worry about it. So I made 2 different arts for this. I'm very happy with this art. I spent a lot of work to make sure it was good. And I coded these cards as Heroes of the Realm cards. Obviously they're not. I don't get to decide that, but it was a birthday present. This is Morrigan Always Learning. They are green, blue, blue for a 1/2 human wizard. Whenever you cast a spell, you may copy it. If you do, you exile that spell with a study counter on it. Okay, that sentence is confusing, but basically it's you cast the spell, it's on the stack, you then copy the spell, exile the original. So the original one doesn't resolve. This does not double all of your spells. It just means that when you cast a spell, you may have Morrigan learn it. Okay? Then, tap, discard a card, add green or blue. You may cast a spell from among cards you own in exile with study counters on them. Now, you do cast it You do have to spend the mana, but this is effectively a Spell Shaper effect. I love Spell Shaper effects, so you are turning any card in your hand into a copy of a spell exiled with Morgan. So a spell you've previously cast this game. Now it is with study counters on them, which means if Morgan dies and you replay them or you play another copy, you can still access them. It's not exiled with this card. It also interacts with the effects of anything else with study counters, which I think is only Kiane and I can't remember the owl's name. It's like Ishimaru or something. It's not, obviously not. That's Yoshimaru's in my head right now, and that's what I'm thinking of. Can't remember their name. But the owl and Kiane Strixhaven card also exile things with study counters on them. So that's really fun. I mentioned that to B, my girlfriend. I didn't mention her name. Her name's B. And she was like, oh, Morgan gets to go to college. Can go to Strixhaven and learn magic. And it's like, yeah, so it feels appropriate. I like it a lot. That's it. And you get a 1 mana discount because you generate a mana with this that you can then spend on the spell that you're casting. Because again, it's not free or anything, right? It's just you can cast a spell. And then it will leave exile except for this first ability can cause you to learn it again, right? Also, specifically combos with Strixhaven mechanics because Magecraft does not care about if you cast a spell or copy a spell, unlike other things that trigger when you cast. And so you're getting double triggers on Magecraft, which is it's just fun. It's like not super powerful, it's just fun. So I love this card. I couldn't not talk about it, and here it is again. I like it. Next, okay, so now we're into Splatoon. For June, I challenged myself, hey, I see a lot of people doing daily shorts, right? Just putting a short out every day, and that seems to be working for people. Maybe that could work for me. It didn't. It did okay. Nothing great. But this isn't about me being like, oh, I don't have any viewers. Hi, viewers. Thank you for being here. I'm not trying to belittle you and say you don't exist. You're listening to me right now. Anyway, so for June, I decided to do Splatoon June, so it was 30 days. Yes, 30. Of custom Splatoon-themed Magic cards. All of them I made in a day. So, like, I need to think of an idea. So none of these are, like, super deep because I didn't have time to, like, really debate what the numbers should be. But I think they're pretty good. Obviously, I'm not going to go through all 30 right now, but I'm going to talk about a bunch of the ones that I liked. And I think still had potential outside of that. The thing about it was that I really wanted to play with this space of all of these cards I'm proposing would be in the same set if they existed. And so I invented mechanics and had callbacks between them and like tried to make color archetypes. So this is a white-black card, and it's part of the white-black archetype of, sort of resurrection and treasure. It is a Grizzco Lifesaver. It's an enchantment that's for only 2 mana. When Grizzco Lifesaver enters the battlefield, put a buoy counter on target creature. Whenever a creature you control with a buoy counter on it dies, you may exile it. You can then spend 3, one of which is a black, and tap an untapped creature you control to return target creature card exiled with Grizzco Lifesaver to the battlefield. Then put a buoy counter on it and create a treasure token. So when it enters, you say, I'm saving this creature. Haha. And then if that creature dies, it gets exiled. You can then later spend 3 to bring it back to the battlefield. If you tap another creature, flavor matters mechanic. It's cool. And then you also get a treasure. So you get kickback of that 3. It's like 2 mana. But you also get to like sort of bank that extra mana for later. So it's potentially better than being 2 mana. Depends on things. And then you give it a thing. So it's kind of like an aura that says, like, when this creature dies, return it to the battlefield, and then reattach this aura to it, which I think there's a real spell that does that. Except for you have to pay the 3 mana, and you get to wait and bring it back when you want to. You don't want it to be like, cool, when this dies, it comes back immediately, and then dies again, because there's, like, another effect coming in. And you get to decide when you're doing it. Which I think is fun. Yeah, that's it. I think it's fun. Next, Cap of Legend. Ooh, this card, I think there was a card that came out that was actually surprisingly similar to this. I don't remember what it was. A number of cards came out that I feel like I kind of predicted. Obviously, I didn't actually predict them, but some cards came out after I designed custom cards that were eerily close. I don't think this is one of them. I think there was actually a card prior to Cap of Legend that I didn't notice when I was designing it, but is actually very similar. This is a 3-mana red and white legendary artifact equipment. When Cap of Legend enters, attach it to target legendary creature you control. Equipped creature has, whenever this creature attacks alone. Oh, I'm thinking of the Fallout one. Yes, in Fallout, I think it's called Idolized. It's like you choose someone to be the main character of the Fallout game, basically, and everyone's like, go, you attack, and we'll stay here because we're townsfolk. I think that's very fun, which is what I was going for here. I think that Fallout came out before Splatoon June, but I wasn't thinking of it when I designed this, I don't think. Anyway, equipped creature has, whenever this creature attacks alone, it gets +X+4 until end of turn, where X is the total power of other creatures you control. I don't know why it's +X+4. I don't have a reason for why I chose that. I probably did it at the time. And then you can equip it for 3 if it falls off, or you didn't have a legend in the first place, which I think is fun. So it's like sort of a 6-mana equipment, but you can flip it once for free, and only on legends, because it's the Cap of Legend. And then you want to be, it's like Voltron. I designed the red-white archetype to be Voltron, but going wide, right? Like exalted, right? It's sort of an exalted style design of you're going to go as wide as you can, but still only attack with one thing. I think that's a really fun archetype for red-white. I think it's a cool space for them to play with. Fragile Squid Beacon, another red card. This one's fun. It's a 1-mana 0/2 artifact creature construct, and it has Defender. Then you can sacrifice it and add red. If you spend this mana on a creature spell, it gains haste. So it's kind of like a treasure that you can just cash in whenever you want. You spend 1 to play the treasure, and then you can cash it in later. But if you do, that creature gets haste. Which I guess, if I think about it, just kind of means if this is in your hand, you can just 0 mana give a creature haste, kind of, right? You spend 1, then you get the 1 back. But I don't mind that. Like, the cost of a card in your hand is still relevant. That might be fine. Cautious Part-Timer. 3-mana, 2/3 white Squid Mercenary. Now, this is Splatoon. I haven't really talked about Splatoon. If you don't play it, then you won't know what I'm talking about. But basically, Squid and Octopus are the main sort of characters. I did not want to roll them together into one type, so there are some Squid and some Octopus in the set. But I don't really play that much with the typing a ton. This was, I think, before they made cephalids into Octopus. I considered making them all cephalids and went, no, they should not all be cephalids. They should be Squid and Octopus. And so they are. But it turns out if I had made them cephalids, they would have been errated into being Octopus, because that's what they did with cephalids. Anyway, whenever Cautious Part-Timer attacks, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land card, untap Cautious Part-Timer and remove it from combat. Otherwise, create a treasure token, and Cautious Part-Timer can't be blocked this turn. I actually really like the design of this card. It is I did this a couple times where you play with the deck being sort of your flip a coin. Instead of flipping a coin to see whether or not you'd attack or not, it's reveal the top card and if it's a land. So this means that it's not flip a coin. It's kind of like, what is that? Like 2 out of 3 is kind of the idea, which I think is more interesting, and you can play with it. Like, the idea that this is a random effect that you can manipulate, I think is cool. So look at the real top card of your deck. If it's a land, they stay back. They go, no, I'm not fighting today, I'm scared. But if they do attack, they're unblockable. So it doesn't actually cost you anything to attack with this card. It's just you might fail. And if you do, you untap, you can still block. Like, I think it's a really interesting space. It's kind of like a free attack, and if you get in, it's unblockable, you get through, and you get a treasure. And if you don't get in, you don't get in. Okay. Still have your blocker. Cool card. Drifting Great Zapfish. white and blue, 4 mana, 4/4 fish, still in Splatoon, if that wasn't clear. It has Defender and Flying. I love Defender. It's like the third time it showed up in this breakdown. You may cast artifact spells as though they had flash. Tap, add colors, spend this mana only to cast artifact spells or activate abilities of artifacts. I like that, like, this. So the idea here was that the Grape Zapfish is kind of like the power source for the entire city, right? And so, to me, power source in Magic, it could be energy. I thought about that, but since I wasn't planning on supporting energy throughout the set, because again, the intent was that these are cards that, even though I wasn't designing a whole set, they all were intended to mesh together as if they were a set, right? And so I said, okay, instead, artifact only mana, that's electricity. And it kind of is if you look at the past of Magic. So this ability of like, you can only spend it on artifacts or to activate artifact abilities, pretty common, not super amazing, but being able to cast them at flash speed, I think really adds the extra value to this card. Also, it's just like a 4/4 Defender Flying. I love that. I love a Defender Flying. It's really funny how ostensibly Defender Flying should just be Defender Reach, but you see Defender Flying more often than Defender Reach because it's just like thematically cooler, you know? I like it. I think it's fun. And also, of course, if they lose Defender, they should be able to fly. Yeah. Anyway. I think this card's cool. Giving Flash is cool, and having it only be artifacts, I think gives it more flavor and make more interest. I've talked about this in the past before about how some cards may be technically better than others, but others are more interesting, right? Like, an Anthem that gives all your creatures +1/+1 is better than giving all your goblins +1/+1. But as long as that's not, like, worse, and I'm in a goblin deck, I'm going to use the goblin one. It's just cooler, right? Like, yeah, you know. Anyway. Ninja Squid Tactics! Hit you with those Ninja Squid Tactics. It's a 3-mana blue and black instant. Destroy up to 1 target creature. Until end of turn, Squid and Octopus cards in your hand have Ninjutsu 1. I love giving abilities to cards. It's kind of one of those weird things in Magic where it's very hard to make this kind of ability if Ninjutsu was not, like, codified. Like, having it say, until end of turn, Squid and Octopus cards in your hand have, quote, return an unblocked attacker you control to hand, put this card onto the battlefield from your hand tapped and attacking. Like, all of that being a bestowed ability as opposed to just saying they have Ninjutsu 1, really hard to do. There's some like weird quirks of it too of why it doesn't work in a lot of situations. You can just do that. You can just say they have that text. But anyway, I'm going off the rails. The point being is, this is a 3-mana kill spell at instant speed. The only cost is that it costs you 2 colors. And then you also have the until end of turn ninjutsu. I think this is a really fun effect. Obviously, it's very niche because of the Squid and Octopus. I think it would have been cool if they did something like this with Assassin's Creed, actually. Assassin's Creed's weird because they're all assassins. There was no ninjas in that set, right? Because anyone who was obviously a ninja was an assassin. They could have been a ninja assassin, but like they kind of just didn't do that because of type line. So I think they didn't play with ninjutsu, but they could have. And I think this would have been a fun way of doing it. Saying like assassins in your hand have ninjutsu would actually have been pretty cool. But yeah. I think it's a fun way of saying I'm removing your blocker, and then I'm going to attack, and then I'm going to get in, and then I'm going to ninjutsu because you didn't have a blocker. The Squid Sisters, kind of the most important characters, I guess. I don't really know Splatoon 1 very well, but these are the Splatoon 1, Callie and Marie. And I decided I wanted to have all of the, like, idols, as they call them in the game, represented as their band name, not as their character names. So that's why they're the Squid Sisters and not Callie and Marie. And yeah, so I wanted to play with that space. So they are a 4-mana, 3/3 Squid Bard. They're not necessarily like super red-white. I don't know if that's the best fit for them, but I thought it was a good fit. And I was playing with how red-white was kind of the like Splatoon 1 solo mode archetype. if that makes sense. And so they're very involved in the Splatoon 1 story mode. So that's sort of where that comes from. Creatures you control have tap, add red or white, spend this mana only to activate abilities, and red and white, other creatures you control that are attacking alone get +3/+0. So you can't really attack with the Squid Sisters because they won't be able to benefit from their pump ability. The idea of saying you've got when someone attacks alone, they gain fire breathing is actually a really cool idea, except for this is 1.5 fire breathing. You have to pay it 2 mana at a time, but you're getting 3 buff. I think that's really fun. But in addition, everyone you keep back can generate that mana, right? So if I have 5 people and one attacks alone, and then the other 4 each tap to generate back half for red, half for white, we can then pay for the Squid Sisters ability 2 times, plus however much extra mana I have. So it's sort of like when you attack alone, for everyone has kind of like exalted 1.5, right? Which I think is kind of fun. I don't know. I'm really happy with this card. It's just weird, but I like it. And also the art was silly. Extra work. We're back to white black. I spent a long time on Splatoon. Again, I made 30 Splatoon cards. Let me talk about Splatoon for a bit, okay? I never really got to make a video about it. I did make a video. I did make a video when I went through like the end of wrap up at the end of the month, but still, I want to talk about Splatoon. Extra work is a 3 mana white and black enchantment. Whenever a player attacks, that player creates a 1/1 fish that is tapped and attacking. It has, when this creature dies, create a treasure token. Whenever an opponent creates 1 or more treasure tokens, you create a treasure token. So this was my spin on these sort of like extortion, like Smothering Tides kind of effects. Not really Smothering Tides, but like I like it when white-black says, if you attack, you get a creature. And I get better. I get better than that though, right? So whenever someone else attacks, they're gonna get a creature, and then when that creature dies, they get a treasure, but you're gonna get a treasure too. And when you attack, you also get the creature. It's not when an opponent attacks. And then, yeah, so everybody's getting a creature, and when those creatures die, they get treasures, but you are getting treasures whenever anyone else gets treasures. Plus any other times that people make treasures. And treasures are just really common. Like, they're just a really nice mechanic. So we see them a lot these days. I really like the design of this. I've been wanting to try and make a deck that's all about, like, encouraging your opponents to attack in ways that benefit you, but I can't really figure it out. That's not what this video is about. I'm moving on. Next, okay, Arca the Living Storm. So this was from a series of cards I did based on Pokemon Pokedex entries. I wanted to do just a bunch. I didn't really know what they were going to be. I think I recorded the intro and outro for that before I made the cards. I just knew what Dex entries I was going to do. So I read the Dex entries out, and then I was like, that's a cool card, probably. I don't know what I made yet, but it's probably good. And this is one of them, Arca the Living Storm. 5 mana, 2/2 Phoenix that says, flying. Whenever you sacrifice a land, create a red elemental creature token with this creature's power and toughness are each equal to the number of land cards in your graveyard. And it is that, like, updating text. It's not like they get counters or anything. And then 2 mana, return Arca from your graveyard to the battlefield, then sacrifice a forest. Yeah. So, whenever you sacrifice a land, you're going to be able to do this. I really like the idea of a card that encourages you and cares about land sacrifice. I think that's interesting. And if I'm going to do that, I'm going to make it red-green because that is the best colors for doing that in. I keep wanting to make like a red-green land sacrifice matters, and I keep not doing it because, I don't know, green's just kind of boring, and I'm just not a huge fan of red-green, is honestly the truth of the matter. But I think this card's really cool. So you can bring it back because it's a Phoenix. You have to be able to do that. And when you do so, you sacrifice forests. If you had no forests, you didn't sacrifice anything. But if you do sacrifice something, you're going to get that elemental. And I love playing with lands in graveyard as a mechanic. I think it's a really cool mechanic to explore. And there's a lot of stuff for it, but not like enough, I think. It's just about like putting them there and then it's like using them as like second hand. It's not really about keeping them in the graveyard, and this wants you to keep them in the graveyard. Oh, so there was a bunch more of that. I don't know if I put them all. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I didn't include them in this list. I don't remember. I just made this list of, at the beginning of the week, and I'm recording it on the Friday. Geralf and Gisa. This was another card, which apparently I forgot the set symbol. This was a card I designed for. It was a Thunder Junction. I think it was after the set actually came out, if I recall correctly. We knew that Geralf and Gisa were in that set, and they're very cool in that set. I like them, but I theorized it would be really fun to have them die in Thunder Junction. Have them, at the end of Thunder Junction, have them be dead, and then Ludovic stitches them together to save both of their lives. I think that would be really, really fun. So I made Geralf and Gisa Together Forever, a 5-mana 4/5 zombie horror. You may cast Geralf and Gisa Together Forever from your graveyard. No questions asked, you just can. And for blue and black, choose a player that hasn't been chosen since your last upkeep. Now, I'm not entirely sure if I need to say, like, chosen with this ability. I don't really know how choosing works in Magic. I never really, like, investigated that fully, right? So I don't know if it would, like, get confused if other effects say choose a player. But that's not the intent, but I don't know. Choose a player that hasn't been chosen since your last upkeep. Return target creature card from that player's graveyard to the battlefield under your control. So if you want to pump, 4-6 mana into this, you have to pull it from someone else's graveyard. But otherwise, you can just choose your own graveyard, right? You can just spend 2, choose your graveyard, and then next turn do it again, right? Since your last upkeep. Return target creature card from that player's graveyard to the battlefield under your control. It becomes a blue and black zombie creature in addition to its other colors and types, with your choice of Defender or Decayed. And this was my way of playing with Gisa and Geralf, right? They're both pretty good at resurrecting things, but they're both very different. Gisa, we're playing with the idea that they are decayed, right? They're like, here they are, but they're going to die. And then Geralf, here they are, but they're just going to stand there and block. And that might seem kind of weird. I don't think a lot of people associate Geralf with Defender, but I do because of I think it might have been the Crimson Vow. It might be Midnight Hunt, but I think it was Crimson Vow version of Geralf. Visionary something. I don't know. And in that, he sacrifices creatures and you get a zombie, equal to its toughness. And so toughness is associated with defenders. It's a whole thing. It's kind of free association, but I actually really like the design of this card, and I love the art. Like, if I was commissioned to do a Secret Lair, I think this is what the art would look like. I'm a huge fan. Squeakers! Okay, we're back to Outlaws again, apparently. This was another one I made after Outlaws came out. Squeakers the Sly is named and designed based off of Squeakers the Sly, a character you might not have heard of because they were one of the wanted bounties in the bounties add-on that they made for Commander. I really want to make a video where I talk about all of the weird Commander party sort of like things. This was not the Commander party. For Outlaws of the Thunder Junction, they had the bounties, which I think like they came with the precons as like a bonus, sort of like add-in, sort of added value kind of idea. But then there was also the Commander Party, which I think the Commander Party rules were really cool, and I want to make a video about it, but I'm not doing it right now. But Squeakers the Sly was one of the cards. All of the bounties are unique characters that did not show up on actual cards. And so I was like, I'm going to design a card for this guy. And because at that time we knew Bloomborough was coming out eventually, I made them care about mice. So, Squeakers the Sly is a 3-mana 1/1 mouse rogue. They have legendary creature. They have first strike. Other mercenaries tokens and mouse tokens, so only tokens, but both mercenaries and mice because they're Outlaws of Thunder Junction, but also Bloomborough crossover. Other mercenary tokens and most tokens you control have, whenever this permanent becomes tapped for the first time on each of your turns, untap it. Whenever you attack, create a 1/1 red mercenary creature token with tap. Target creature you control gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Activate on turn. So that second ability, of course, is just the mercenary ability from Outlaws of Thunder Junction. All of the mercenary tokens had this special buff somebody up ability, which I thought was really good, actually. It's a really clean mechanic. It's kind of like that It's kind of like that Exalted thing I was talking about, where you can sort of funnel your damage into one big attacker instead of attacking with everybody. And so it's whenever you attack, you're going to create one of these mercenaries. Great. You can't tap with them immediately because it's sorcery speed, so it's kind of slow, but I still think it works well. But let's talk a little bit about that first ability. Mercenary tokens and mouse tokens. And it does say other, so if you made a token copy of this, it wouldn't be able to buff itself. But inherently it couldn't normally because it's not a token. But I don't remember how many mice tokens there actually ended up being in Bloomburrow. Again, this was designed before Bloomburrow came out. But I just love this clean effect of whenever a permanent becomes tapped, for the first time, untap it. And I especially like it because this is one of the cards that I kind of predicted. Not predicted. Like, there is not a card that squeakers. Do not get me wrong. But Dionysus from Jumpstart Command... No, Foundation's Jumpstart has this, whenever this permanent becomes tapped, untap it effect. Which just, like, I didn't even notice at first. I just read Dionysus and went, holy crap, what a good design. And until I was, like, going through my custom designs to look for... just like what cool things I could talk about. I didn't even remember that I designed this. So Dionysus is elves you control have, when this becomes tapped, untap this. This triggers only once per turn. Whereas mine is when this becomes tapped the first time on each of your turns, untap it. Actually, I believe Dionysus also cares about it being on your turn. It's during your turn when this becomes tapped, untap it. This triggers only once per turn. So they both actually function identically, except Dionysus hits all of your elves, whereas this hits only your tokens and only mice and mercenaries. Which, I don't know, I just think that's really cool. It's such a weird effect. I don't think we've seen it in Magic before. I think Dionysus looks so busted, but like, yeah, this is sort of the same idea. Except whereas Dionysus is buffing elves, which is huge because elves they also get +1/+1 counters. Don't worry about that. Whereas elves are huge because they're all mana dorks, so you're actually getting, you can tap them for mana and then untap them and then tap them again, which is... But the idea was that you could use your mercenaries twice, right? That was the idea, but I wanted that to be not just it triggers twice because that's too limited. I wanted it to have larger appeal than that, and so just the bare minimum of giving them sort of pseudo vigilance felt very like red-white. So I like it. I think it's fun. I love this card. I think Squeakers is so cool. I hope we get to see an actual real Squeakers eventually. I've spent too long on this card. Moving on. What do we have? Amnesio! Okay, it's Amnesio. This is like one of my most viewed videos of the year, so you might have seen Amnesio before. They are a 3-mana 6/2 fishmonger, which I don't think I was originally going to call them a fishmonger, but I think my girlfriend suggested that, and I was like, I got it. You're right. I have to. They're a legendary creature fishmonger. They are based off of the Dan format or Forgetful Fish. Whenever a card would be put on top of a library, exile it instead. The next time a player would draw a card, instead put a memory counter on the last card exiled with Amnesio without a memory counter on it. I don't actually know if that works the way I wanted to. The idea is that if you had 2 cards in exile and one had a counter on it and the other one didn't, even if this one was there more recently, the other one would get the counter, right? It would see that counter and go to the next one. It's supposed to be making like a shared library, but in the most complicated way possible. Only if you manipulate the top of the deck does it become a shared library. If you don't, everyone just draws from their own libraries. That's the concept. Woo! 2, discard a card, counter target spell. If that spell is countered this way, put it on top of its owner's library instead of into its graveyard. But of course, it's not going to do that. It's going to get, it's going to get exiled instead. You understand. Any player may activate this ability. That's what makes it a Monger. If you don't know, Monger is a creature type that was made for a cycle of creatures that would sell their wares to anybody. And they all had abilities that you could pay into. Yeah, they all had abilities that anybody could pay into to make their effect happen. And I always thought they were very, very cool. And here's one. It's a fishmonger. And I just love this. Like, honestly, I just love this art. This might be the best piece of art I've drew all year. I adore this picture. It's so much fun. Kara Vrist. Oh, I forgot she was on this list. I love Kara Vrist. So Kara Vrist is an actual lore character from Magic. I made a video with my girlfriend where both of us had to design cards for characters that have never been on cards, right? They've only been mentioned in the lore and flavor text, whatever. Kara's been on like 8 different cards in the lore or something, but she's never actually been on a card. I think there's pictures of her. Like, I think some cards art show Kara Vrist, or at least people seem to claim that. I don't know whether or not it's true or how they know, but Kara Vrist, Resistant Spymaster, is a 2-mana, 1/2 legendary creature human rogue. Kara Vrist, Resistant Spymaster, enters with a Shroud counter, which it probably shouldn't be capitalized. I had someone pointed that out to me, which makes sense. Creatures you control with Hexproof, Ward, or Shroud have Skulk. A lot of weird keyword soup going on here, but whatever. The idea of this was to make a Shroud Matters character. But because that's kind of limiting when you don't use Shroud anymore, it's like a sunset mechanic, we're instead going to say Hexproof, Ward, or Shroud. And they have Skulk because I want them to be these like sneaky rogues, right? I got in underneath everything. Which, if you don't know, Skulk is they can't be blocked by creatures with greater power than them. Then they have blue, remove a Shroud counter from a creature you control, put a Shroud counter on a creature you control. And that's it. It lets you move the Shroud counter around. Now, the way it's worded, if you did have any like counter doubling, you could have like, you're not moving the counter. So if I say I'm going to remove a counter, put a counter on you, oh, my thing makes me double my counter, so now there's 2 counters on them, and then, yeah. That's fine. I don't care. Like, if you can... Magic's all about finding loopholes. I don't mind that at all. I like this card. I enjoy this art. It kind of looks like a Coke can if it was blue. I guess that's Pepsi. Anyway. I don't know. It's weird. I just think... I like Kara Vrist. I think she's fun. Aimless Mola! Oh, it's so cool! This is a big fish! That's all you... It's a big fish! No, I actually like this card a lot. It's a 6-mana 5/5 fish. Whenever Aimless Mola attacks, defending players, but I should probably talk about the origin of the card first, shouldn't I? This was a design challenge where B and I had to design cards really, really quickly, but we just pitched them at each other. We could then take as much time as we needed to actually like build the cards, so they changed a little bit from the initial pitch to the actual game, and we played those games. That was like actual gameplay. I don't think we ended up showing much actual gameplay because it was not recorded very well, but we actually got to talk about how it played and stuff. These aren't just pure theory. Like, a lot of my custom cards are just like, I theorized a bunch of cards, and I think they look cool, but I've never played them. No, these ones did, because the idea for that was I wanted it to be sort of a limited format of you design, like, how many cards? Like, 6 cards? Yeah, I think it's like you design 6 cards, you get 4 copies of each, which gives you 16, and then the rest of the deck is... I don't remember. You design a number of cards, you get 4 copies of each of them, that makes your deck plus lands. And the idea was for it to be a 40-card limited format analog. Anyway, this is Aimless Mola. My deck was all fish themed. I think there's more of it from that in here. I really liked that video a lot. Go watch that video, please. It was really good. And whenever it attacks, defending player puts a stun counter on any number of creatures they control. Tap those creatures at the beginning of the next end step. I have since looked at this and went, I don't think that needs to be next end. I think that could just be put stun counters on each of them and tap them. I don't think it needs to wait, but anyway. Each creature without a stun counter on it, again, if it just was tapped, I wouldn't even need to say that. Each creature able to block Aimless Mola does so. So, just in general, when this attacks, everyone's gotta block them. Unless they're like tapped down or whatever. So you put the stun counter on them, it taps them down, now they can't block. If you choose to do that, you have the cost of, they're tapped down on they have a stun counter, so they're not gonna untap. Otherwise, they're forced to block this 5/5. And I think that's fun. You don't have to block my big 5/5, but if you don't choose to keep them tapped down forever, you'll have to. And I think that's a cool way of saying, like, yeah, you know, yeah. But it's more than that. It also has whenever it's dealt damage, you draw that many cards. So everyone has to attack it, and unless you say, no, I'm going to tap down my guys, you're going to give me a bunch of card draw, even if my guy dies. So I want to see more of this, like, whenever this is dealt damage, draw that many cards effects in blue. Yeah, I'm about that. I think that's fun. Howling Eddy. This was another one of my cards I designed for that series. Howling Eddy is an enchantment aura. It, like, the water Eddie, like an Eddie in water, not this guy's name is Eddie. This guy's name is Eddie. That's not what I'm saying. This is a 3-mana aura. When it enters, tap enchanted creature and put a stun counter on it. That might have been a bit overkill. I don't know if it needed to get the stun counter initially, or maybe it didn't need to tap initially. I think I kind of overbaked this one. But anyway, at the beginning of your upkeep, you may draw a card. If you don't, you put a stun counter on enchanted creature, right? So the idea here is that it taps it down and stuns it. So it won't untap it the next turn. Then when it comes back to your turn, you can put a stun counter on it so that it stays tapped down, or you can draw a card. So it's supposed to be this, like, you know, Phyrexian Arena style effect. But again, it only if the thing you've tapped down with the Howling Eddy remains alive. You could even enchant your own thing with it if you wanted to. If you think your thing's less likely to die or something, right? Like that's allowed. And I like this card. I think it's just a cool way of getting an extra draw every turn. It is fragile because it's an aura, which is always fun. And it has this alternate mode. You can use it just as a blue tap down effect. I think this form of, like, perma tack down as blue removal is great. I really like that form of blue removal. And so this lets you, it's like a flexible version of that, which I think is really fun. And I like the art. It's really funny to me. Arcane Angler, again, as I mentioned before, it's fish. It's a fish deck. This one's kind of, I almost didn't include this in this list. It's a 4-mana 1/3 with flying that says whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card and reveal it. If it is a fish card, put a +1/+1 counter on Arcane Angler. So they're going to go fishing in your deck by drawing a card. But they won't get bigger unless it was a fish. Like, they'll fly, like, you know, if you fish up a boot, you get the boot. Like, you still get the boot. You still have it. They're just not that happy about it, you know? Like, I think it's a, like, surprisingly elegant design for a card. I really wanted to make a card called Arcane Angler, like, way far back. That was, like, a 5-color weird fish deck thing, but, like, legend. But I think it's just a good name, and it probably makes more sense as this anyway. So, Arcane Angler. I want the fishing set. I want the fishing set so badly. Remora's Bauble. This also was from that series. This one, I think, in the video looked different. I updated my document after that video because in that video, like I said, we had real gameplay. And in that gameplay, I went, okay, this is kind of broken. So originally it was just like, I think it was the exact same effect, but it added 2 mana. I think that's right. I think it was colorless. And, you know, B and I talked about it, and she was like, it's just too strong. Like, just make it 1. I was like, should I make it cost 2 mana? And she's like, no, just make it only produce 1 mana. I went, oh, okay, sure, let's try that. So we did that in the last game, and I still won, and it was great. But no, I like it a lot. It is tap, add colorless, activate only if you've drawn 2 or more cards this turn. Oh, also, I think it originally was like a weird broken effect. We didn't play a single game with like the way I originally worded it because I just like worded it completely wrong. That's neither here nor there. Add colorless, activate only if you've drawn 2 or more cards this turn. So if you do it on your turn, you only have to find 1 extra card draw. Say you have a Howling Eddy or something. But if you want to use it on someone else's turn, you have to find some way to draw 2 cards on their turn, which is much harder. I love it. I love referencing Mystic Remora. I've never played with Mystic Remora. It's like, I don't play with cards like that usually, but I think it's so pretty. I like fish. They're cool. Banished to the Belly. I think this is the last one of the fish set that I included in this list. And this one's especially important to me because it is kind of a weird prediction. Now, when I designed this, we were just riffing, me and B. We were just pitching cards at each other. So I didn't really go looking to see if this effect already existed in Magic. And it sounds like it kind of already did, but I didn't know about it. And then after I designed it and put out that video, I believe Duskmorn had a card with a very similar design. So I think that's a cool one. That one, I was very excited when I saw that card. I was like, oh, I designed that. I did that. So this is Banished to the Belly. It's a 3-mana aura. It's white. It says enchant creature. When Banished to the Belly enters, exile up to 1 target non-land permanent until Banished to the Belly leaves the battlefield. Enchanted creature gets +0/+X, where X the total mana value of the cards exiled with Banished to the Belly. Now, I should point out first and foremost, this was originally XX in the original video, and B suggested it doesn't need to be XX. 0X is much more balanced and much more white, and I think that she's right, and I'm very happy with that change. It just makes you tougher. It doesn't make you hit harder. And so yeah, whatever you eat, you're going to get something based on its value while it's in exile. But if you die, it goes away. And if I recall correctly, the Duskmourn version of this effect is very, very similar. I think it only hits creatures maybe, so it's different, but I like non-land removal in my O-Rings. I think O-Rings should do non-land removal if they can. But it hits a creature, and again, it's an aura, so if you kill the creature holding the aura, it dies. However, if that card, which again, I don't remember the name of it, it's like Protected by Spirits or something, it gives the creature ward. So mine's giving it extra toughness, that one's giving it ward. Similar concept. I'm very happy with that. I feel like that is a win in my books. Next, Gomo! So, in addition to Amnesio, who was this idea of a card to embody the format of Dandan, I wanted to do a whole cycle. I wanted to do 5 different colors, 5 different monocolored legends that all embody a format. So Amnesio was the first one. Gomo was the second one I designed. This is Gomo Twin Protectors, a 4-mana 3/8 that is embodying Two-Headed Giant. When Gomo Twin Protectors enters, choose target player. For as long as you control Gomo, spells and abilities count you and that player as teammates. This wording took me a lot of work. Honestly, I think this doesn't have precedent in Magic, and so like it just probably wouldn't work anyway. But there are words that use the term count as, and so I thought that was the most appropriate terminology for that effect. And then in reminder text, it says they don't count you as opponents. And this is the important part. Even in 2-player, your spells and abilities will not see them as opponents. So if something says target opponent, they can't target you because you're not opponents. Now, you are still opponents. It's just that spells and abilities don't count you as them, so you can still attack each other as normal. It doesn't stop combat. Whenever a creature your opponents, again, spells and abilities, this is an ability, so this is not including your teammate. When a creature your opponents control attacks you or one of your teammates, that creature can be blocked this turn by creatures you and your teammates control, as though their controller is the defending player. I don't know if that mechanic works at all, but yes, this is Two-Headed Giant. The idea is that you're going to nominate another player, if you're playing this in Commander, to be the other, your teammate, and then you're going to Two-Headed Giant. You don't get to do all the things that you can do in Two-Headed Giant, but Two-Headed Giant, you can't like combine your mana anyway. You can't really do a lot of stuff. You take turns simultaneously, you attack together potentially, but I think the most important thing is the blocking together. So you can block to help your teammate can block to help you. Why would they do that? Well, it's going to mess up your opponent more, right? If someone's like, I'm attacking with the 5/5, and you're like, it'll die if both of us team up and kill it, you might decide to do that if they're the threat, right? I think that's fun. And I think that first mode just has a lot more value than it seems. But otherwise, they're just hanging out. They're 3/8. Let's go. Then there's Viz. That was the second of the cycle that I made. Well, the second after Amnesio. Viz the Oathbreaker, which is embodying Oathbreaker. 3-mana, 8/8. Demon Monger. Holy crap, I made this cheap. Why did I make this so cheap? When Viz enters, each player who doesn't own a card in exile with tax counters on it searches their library for an instant or sorcery card, exiles it with a tax counter on it, then shuffles. To me, the most important part of Oathbreaker is that you have this signature spell in the command zone. You can only cast that spell while your commander's on the field. Now, I didn't think it would be fair to make sure that everyone had to have their commander on the field, because it would have to be yours and theirs, so it's just Viz. I just made it Viz. You can spend X Until end of turn, you may cast target card you own in exile with X+1 tax counters on it. So if it has 1 tax counters, you can spend 0 to cast it. You still have to pay its normal cost. It doesn't cast without paying its mana cost or anything. It's just, you can cast it. When you do, that's when you cast it, exile it as it resolves with X+3 tax counters on it. So again, if it was 0, you target something with 1, you cast it, it doesn't have those anymore because the counters go away when you change the zone. Then it goes back into exile with 0, because that was X, +3. So next time, you'd have to spend 2. That's paying the 2 tax. And then, of course, it would go back with 5 because it's 2 + 3. I think that is like a weirdly clean way of doing tax when you're not actually, when it's not a real rule of the game. It's just something you're inventing. And any player may activate this ability because it is a demon monger, just like our Amnetio friend. Now, the thing about this series, as much as I like this card, and I love this art, dang, I cooked with that one. Whew. As much as I like them, I never made the other 2. I did not make a red or a green. I had some ideas. I don't know if those formats would resonate as well with other people. Like, I was worried I was going to force it and it would just be kind of meh. And like, I'd rather do a good job, so I didn't. And especially, as I mentioned before, just the nature of trying to make a video every week. I don't want to be phoning these in. I have to sometimes, and I don't want to. So the idea here is to try to not, if I can help it. So I didn't make those other 2 yet. I still kind of want to. I would love to do something with Horde Magic. I think that might be fun with like red maybe. And green, I was thinking like Battle Box, where you just get to make lands for free, right? Battle Box being that you have no lands in your deck. Instead, you just like kind of Hearthstone mana, make an extra land token every turn. That kind of idea. Yeah. So, moving on. Sprig! This one I just actually called. Like, this one just, like, actually happened. It's not exactly the same, don't get me wrong, but it is so close. When, like I didn't see it originally, but my girlfriend showed me Shrufus, and I went, holy crap, and she went, I know, right? This is Sprig the Spreading Solace. This is another card I designed for the Pokemon video. It's not supposed to be an actual Pokemon. It's based off of a Magikarp's description, I believe. Oh yeah, actually, I put it in the flavor text. Although weak and helpless, Magikarp are incredibly fertile. They exist in such multitudes, you'll soon grow tired of seeing them. That's the description of Magikarp in one of the Pokemon games. And so I was like, no, this is Saprolings. So I thought, ooh, I'll make the first ever, because this was before Shrufus came out, the first ever Saproling and make them legend. And then they did that. They made the actual first ever Saproling. And they made it a legend. This says, if damage would be dealt by a Saproling you control, prevent that damage and create that many 1/1 green sapling creature tokens. Shrufus has this exact same text, except for Shrufus doesn't know the damage. It just does the damage and makes that many 1/1s, which is absurd. Mine, on the other hand, has the benefit of also being green-white. So if you want to play around with, like, Pallid Myconid or whatever, you can do stuff with that. So that's fine. I think that's cool. I think green-white feels appropriate for this design, and I'm very much into make a bunch of stuff and not do any damage kind of things. I'm kind of a jerk that way. I like that kind of just like, I want to just like build a big board. I don't want to fight. That's me. Don't take the defenders, right? Yeah. All right. Moving on. Spice. I love Spice. Spice Harvest Helper is a 3-mana, green, red, and black 2/3 Scarecrow. I was trying to design a Scarecrow. I thought, I want to make a legendary Scarecrow, so I'm gonna. It was October, and I just wanted to. Duskborn had just come out, but I wasn't super happy with the Scarecrows in that set. There was a bunch. They were cool. There was a legend Scarecrow in the main set, which had nothing to do with Scarecrows. And then there was a Scarecrow in the Commander set, which was cool. It was a cool design card, but I mean, I never really got to see it because it was a Commander exclusive. It wasn't like part of Standard, right? And I get why it's not, because it uses Gold, and Gold's not really used in Standard, but it just. I didn't really get to play with it, so I don't really know that card that well. But it also didn't really care about Scarecrows. It cared about cards that had 2 or more types, and Scarecrows do because they're artifact creatures. But it's just kind of like any artifact creature triggers it. Anyway, so I wanted to make a Scarecrow commander. It is 3 mana, it is 3 colors, it's a 2/3, and it says Scarecrows you control are all colors and plants in addition to the other types, which I think is funny. Whenever you cast a Scarecrow spell, copy it, except the copy has, this creature gets +2/+2 for each -1/-1 counter on it, so it's getting +1 total because it's negating the -1 and then it's getting an additional +1. And activated abilities of this creature get creature cost 3 less to activate. You may activate each of those abilities only once each turn. So there's a bunch of Scarecrows that have activated abilities that are like 3 or less generic mana, and so I have this extra rider of like, it has to be once each turn. Only once each turn. But you can cast them for free. And so it turns all of your Scarecrows. So it doesn't actually, sorry, I should say, this is when you cast a Scarecrow spell, copy it. The copy has all of this text. And therefore, half of your Scarecrows, in theory, will have these added bonuses, which is probably fine. I did play around with it just being a passive effect across your entire board, but I think this is more fun. And it gives you extra bodies, and it's cool. The 3 or less means a lot of times you're going to have the 0 mana make 1 mana, because a lot of Scarecrows are filters for some reason. I don't know why, but they are. So I thought that was a cool, like, weird little, like, pseudo ramp thing. Yeah. I'm just really into this card. I think this card looks really fun. I'd play this commander. Next, Oakroot Gentle Tangleworm. This was another challenge video. I tried to do a bunch of challenge videos because I thought people might be into that. Let me know if you were. Oakroot Gentle Tangleworm was inspired by my girlfriend giving me the prompt of a card that, like a non-black or blue card that interacted with my opponent's hand. And I went, you mean Tempting Worm? And she went, what's Tempting Worm? And I said, oh, yeah, that's right. You only know good cards. Tempting Worm, if you don't know, is ETB. Each of your opponents can put any number of permanents from their hand onto the battlefield. It is absurd. I don't think it's ever worth playing, probably, unless you really want to lose. But the thing about that card is it does not force them to. It lets them. And so I really wanted this card to be a way of forcing your opponent. You're not looking, so I should read it. It's another defender. Aren't I predictable? It's a 6/6 for 3, Tangleworm, and, not Tangleworm, Tempting Worm. When Oakroot Gentle Tangleworm enters, look at target opponent's hand. Put a permanent card from it onto the battlefield under that player's control with a defender counter on it. So first thing, if it's not a creature, it still gets the counter. Defender counters don't exist in actual Magic, but I really, really hope they're going to add them. I want defender counters so much. They would be cool. And it is not a May. So you don't get to look and go, oh, these are all busted. I'm not putting any on the battlefield. But whatever you pull gets defender. So it's going to be mitigated with how strong it is, which is cool. It says, hey, come on, hang out and just hang out. Just don't attack anybody, but hang out. And that's cool. I think that's fun. And they don't get to choose no either, right? It was Tempting Worm. If you were going to like say, hey, dump your hand, and they go, ooh, I don't want to dump this actually. It's a 1/1, and then I want to save it until I have a protection, and it's just gonna die, and they play it, and then you kill it, right? Like, But Oakroot, you could say, oh, give that to me. It's on the field now. Everyone gets to see what you had in your hand. Isn't that great? Then it says you may repeat this process once. So it is one opponent, but you get to do it twice. So you could target 2 different opponents, or you could hit the same one twice if you wanted to, or you could say, actually, no, I don't want to do that again. That's it. One was enough for me. That is a big scary thing that I saw the rest of your hand, right? So I wanted this card to work in both commander and non-commander formats. Well, in multiplayer and non-multiplayer formats, I guess is what I mean. Never-ending Journey. This was a weird challenge. You can see it has the type line Instant Adventure. I wanted to answer the question of, what would happen if you had an adventure as its own spell? It's not a subset of another spell. And this is what I came up with. It's stupid. You would never do this, but I think it's a cool, like, it's an interesting exploration of Magic rules. Adventure means exile this card as it resolves, right? Like that's really all adventure means. Well, it's exile this card as it resolves. You may then cast it as not an adventure from exile. But it can't be cast not as an adventure because it does not have not an adventure attached to it, unlike actual adventure cards. So instead, it just says, then exile this card. So this is Neverending Journey as a 1-mana instant adventure. Exile target creature you own and put 2 time counters on it. If it doesn't have suspend, it gains suspend. Then exile this card. When this card is put into exile from anywhere, put 2 time counters on it. It gains suspend. At the beginning of your upkeep, remove a time counter. This is what suspend does. So what this means is that you are going to spend 1 mana to save somebody's life by exiling them at instant speed. And then 2 turns from then, they're going to pop back into existence, but Neverending Journey will also come off suspend, and so you can either cast it on the guy again, or somebody different, and just keep going on this journey. So it's this weird, like, infinite blink, but only every 2 turns. I think it's a really interesting effect, but you would just do this by doing it, like, exile target creature you own and put 2 time counters on it. It doesn't have suspend, gain suspend. Then exile this and put 2 time counters on it. It gains suspend, right? Like that's what you would do. I do kind of like this added value of when this card is put into exile from anywhere. I would love to see some effects with that. That would be a really fun, like, red mechanic of having, like, when this card gets exiled. So if you impulse draw this, it has a trigger and does something. I think that would be a really fun space for them to play with. Next, Taya Ever Generous. This is not one of my format commanders. This was still sort of inspired by the same concept, though, which was like, let's ask a stupid question and answer it stupidly. Taya Ever Generous answers the question of, what if Generous Gift was your commander? Now, I actually designed 2 versions of this card. I did Taya Ever Generous and Taya The Perfect Gift. And I liked the formatting of Ever Generous better. I sort of made The Perfect Gift first. It has flavor text, and I was like, oh, I don't want to remove the flavor text. So only this alternate version got sort of this updated stuff that didn't have room for the flavor text, and I think it's a better card. So this is the one I'm talking about. 4 mana, 6/6, Flash Defender. When Taya enters and at the beginning of your end step, you may have a player gain control of it. If a player gains control of Taya this way, destroy target permanent they control. So you can play it and have it go boop, and pop into your opponent's board and blow something that they have up, just like it was Generous Gift, except for more expensive and a bigger body. And then at the end of the turn, you do it again. But they get to do it. And then that person gets to do it. And then you get to do it again. And then that person gets to do it. And I just think that's fun. I think that's a very fun thing that you can do. Yeah. Yeah, the other version of this card didn't have the flash, didn't have the instant speed aspect, didn't have the ETB. It was just at the end step. I like it. I think it's fun. So that's Taya. I had to draw a cool elephant. That's it. That's me. This is going to be a bad video. I hope you enjoyed me rambling about my cards. I just wanted to talk about them. Happy New Year. This is some cool cards I designed this year. I designed a lot of custom cards. And like, it's weird. I always feel like it's really easy to look at YouTube and go, 1 video a week, that's not so much. Most channels put out like 2 or 3, but when you're just one person, it's a lot. It takes a lot out of you. Anyway, have a good night, everyone. I will see you next time for I think a special like announcement video. Like, I'm going to phone that one in more than I'm phoning this one in. Because it's New Year's. The next video comes out on the 30th. Like, I don't want to do that. So I'm going to make a video, but it's going to just be me saying something that I could be saying right now, and I'm not going to say it right now. You have to watch that video. Also, because, like, no one's watching this. Well, I shouldn't say no one. If you are watching this, thank you so much. I appreciate it. But, yes, I don't expect many people to get to this final little bit. So if I put an announcement here, very few people would see it. So have a good night. I'll see you next time. Good night. Good luck. Good fun. Goodbye.